Hi, and thanks for tuning into episode 7 of Creative Glue, our very last Emergence Aslumni special. Today, we chat with fellow filmmakers Richard Todd and Richard Bullock, who formed a lifelong bond on the impact for good. We'll hear more about the power of creativity in driving real behavioural change, and a cool story about a TVC made in 2018 that's still earning airtime. So sit back and listen on in to hear more about the collaborative spirit and glue that is Emergence.
Creative glue. Creative glue. Your ideas and my ideas will stick together like glue. 'Cause we've got the creative glue.
Welcome, everybody, and thanks for tuning into Creative Glue, where we continue to look at the common bond that brings creatives together. Today marks the final official Emergence Special pod, where we've been taking ourselves and on a journey through Aslumni of the Emergence Creative Festival and how they've been a critical part of the festival's success. And while this is our last session with Emergence Aslumni, the good news is that it's not the end of the Emergence specials. With the festival starting this week, in fact, if you're listening to this on the day of its release, then it all kicks off tonight. And we're going to be bringing you the best of the best, including insights, interviews, and daily wrap-ups of the festival itself. So make sure you like, subscribe, follow, and turn on your notifications so you don't miss any of the action this week. Right, if you've been listening to our latest couple of episodes, you may have picked up that many stories are demonstrating the fact that creativity has the ability to extend far beyond commercial success, driving real change and doing good things. Now, today you'll walk away with twice. You'll be walking away twice as rich, as I'm chatting with two amazing blokes and Emergence Aslumni, Richard Bullock and Richard Todd, both of which use their creative powers to do lots of very good things. Two legendary filmmakers who connected back in Emergence in, I think, 2014, was it? And they're still collaborating today. Welcome, guys.
Hello
Thanks
there.
very much, Scotty. Slumni, I love it.
Aslumni. All this time I thought it was a spelling mistake the whole time.
No, it's a Matty Lewisism.
Of course it is.
Now to give our listeners a bit of a background, Richard Todd, or Toddy, has been running Aquarius Productions for over 30 years, a multi-award-winning production house in Margs. And he produces proactive, factual programming, specialising in character-driven social issues and conversations and conservation feature-length documentaries. Documentaries that have a positive impact on people, society, and the environment, with films like Frackman and Dying to Live and Whale Shark Gypsy. Now, Perth-born Richard Bullock's journey in advertising led him to directing, and he's created everything from commercials to feature-length films. Rich has also directed content that bridges brands with NGOs, like a recent series on sustainable fashion and documentary on sight-saving surgeries. Represented by Hungry Man in Europe and North America, plus Revolver in Australia and New Zealand since 2009, Rich continues to influence the global creative scene and works all around the world. I could probably go on all day, but let's kick things off with you guys telling us the story of how you met at Emergence and how it all began. To which we've now lost our mate Rich again.
Can you use that intro?
Yeah, fuck oath.
Yeah.
Not wasting it.
No, that was good. That was good. I just was waiting and I was like, hey, mate, we lost Rich.
Yeah, I watched him drop out and I thought, I'm just going to keep going. I just need this.
Mate,
We'll find a line. And
you're a true pro. Good on you.
Richie
hello,
Rich.
Oh, hi there.
You're back, mate.
I inserted the modem into my arsehole now, so I'm as close as I can possibly
That should
be.
work fine.
So
If not,
if this doesn't work, there's nothing left that we can do. I'm gonna give up.
Oh no, we'll
give up.
just joke about the fact that it's not the 3-country kind of internet lines that's causing us problem as usual.
Yeah, it's
this
true,
time
eh?
it's just like Sydney.
I love it.
It's true.
I love it.
It's always out here. Anyway, let's crack on. Sorry about that.
Yeah, he just talked you up and you weren't even on. You sounded
Oh.
really impressive.
Let's kick things off with how you both sort of met at Emergence and how that story began.
Whose
You can go
memory
first,
would be better? I think
Uh,
all I can remember now is I was living in your house, but I don't know if I was sleeping in your house. But where did we actually meet?
yeah, look, I think we had a chat by phone first through a Matt Lewis intro. And then he was like, "Oh, yeah, you guys going to get on good. Rich surfs, and he's also a closet doco maker." And I went, "Oh, he sounds great." And then after the chat, I was like, "Yep, you come and stay at my house." That was when we were in the big house next door. And that's where it all began. And Ned also stayed, right, that first time.
Oh no,
So
that was
Ned who?
That may have been second time, Ned McNeilage. But like,
The
maybe
first
there
time
was
was just me and you.
maybe the first time. I'm thinking I did it. I gave a tour when I first got back to stay in. I came back and stayed in Perth for a couple of years, and Matt Lewis found me through a contact, and I met up with Matt and realised that we're from similar schools in Perth, or the same school precisely, and had a lot of mutual friends. And I spoke to Matt, and he was talking about doing this event. And I don't know if he had done one already or it was the first one that I came to. But anyway, I gave a presentation at the first one about traveling around, working around the world, different countries, and my perspectives on that. And I think Toddy was in one of the presentations, or I can remember sitting next to you, and maybe that was the first time. And I think you showed a trailer all about
Dying to Live.
Dying to Live. Yeah, but I remember Dying to Live trailer because it was very impactful, and there was there was a aspect of that trailer was about the woman or the parents at home hearing ambulances and feeling bad because they thought that might lead to a donation that would save their child.
Yeah.
And I remember you would, yeah.
It was an early. It was an early.
Talked to me about, yeah, and you talked to me about the dilemmas, or just and how personal you were with your approach to film. I mean, the way that you were doing your filmmaking was so personal, and so I just found it very fascinating. Anyway, I could listen to Toddy for hours about his approach and technique, but he was so personal with it, and I found it quite inspiring. And then I guess over the next bit, we just started talking about, he sort of came upon the idea of merging, because I understood a little bit about documentary then and a bit more now, but like how to merge sort of traditional marketing advertising techniques with doco. And that was an interesting, that was the combination he and I cooked up later on in his project for Dying to Live. But, you know, that's, I think I remember how we can, anyway.
Yeah, that's
after that, close. I was living in your house.
Yeah, that's how we kind of moved in. But I mean, that's kind of brings me to a first important point, that X factor of creative emergence, how, Maddie worked out that you and I were just going to be like that, even though we hadn't really hung out. And at that stage, I didn't have, I rented that place out, but it was never when I was in it. So to have someone in my house, even, I was like, "Matt, you're 100% with this guy," and he's like, "You're gonna love him, Toddy." and I mean, that quickly went to both of us having a love for surf. So Rich and I going for surfs before Emergence in the morning, and then him like going to me, "Oh, I've got to be at such and such at like 9 a.m." And he's like, "Do you know where that is, Toddy?" I'm like, "Yeah, I know where that is." And because there's, a couple of hundred wineries here, sometimes, Cullens can turn into something else that starts with C. And I can remember driving him there, and I think he was like emceeing a panel first thing in the morning. And halfway to driving him there, I'm like, "Mate, we're going to the wrong winery."
There's a good red everywhere, right?
Oh my
And I mean, it's interesting to explore the fact that I suppose surfing has been a really interesting connection. And we've heard that throughout this a little bit, like typically you guys run a few board meetings out there, in the surf. I mean, does that play a big role in that connection for you guys and where you get to hang and be creative?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I got two anecdotes about that, but the one surf I remember we went away from Main Break further north, I think, or to that goat track. What was that one called, Toddy? Yeah, we went there, and it was just you and I on a sort of beyond the reef there, and we both took off on the peak and crossed, and immediately crossed the other way. Like, I don't know why we both decided to do that, but like we did everything we could to like collide. We made good takeoff, and then but I remember walking back up that track that day. It was a beautiful surf we had, beautiful spot, and then just you and I in the ocean, and I remember walking back up that track and you saying to me, I make films about I'm sort of either inspired or I follow two instincts. One is laughing and the other one is crying. And I never forgot that saying. Like, I thought that was really an amazing way to look at creative work or filmmaking, actually, in terms of doco and storytelling. Like, I just thought that was awesome and so simplified. And I'd often have a tendency to overcomplicate my projects and get to, overthink them. And I'm sure a lot of creative people probably have that issue as well. And you get into a bit of inertia. And then I remember thinking one year, and it was kind of a bit corny, but I sort of understood with surfing the parallel with creativity, that commitment to just send yourself forward and go off, even if you might look like a bit of a goose falling or whatever. That parallel with surfing, the full commitment to something, sending yourself over the edge, and then the thrill of putting yourself into that situation feels very much like when you think of a film or whatever and then put your heart into it and go for it. Like, I found it quite a similar parallel.
Yeah, it's a pretty good analogy. I might talk about the second one we had, which, back to your point, Scott, it really was a board meeting. I was coming over to Sydney, and last minute I rang Rich up, and in the true spirit of emergence and connectivity, I've got one other really cool friend in Sydney that again plays in a different world to Rich. It's a guy called Mick Grushi. He's one of the original kind of I guess VJs from the 80s. He was
Very
doing the
cool.
Horden Pavilion back in the day, and he's a superhuman being. He does lots of work for First Nation kind of stories, etc., and still playing in the space. So I wanted to catch up with him, and I wanted to catch up with Rich, and I had bugger all time. And so I said to Rich, how we're supposed to get together and have a chat about Dying to Live and the marketing of that and the potential of a TV commercial. How about instead of doing that at brekkie after a surf, let's do it in the surf? He's like, great, you've timed it well, Toddy. The surf is huge and the surf is pumping. And he took me to this place. He goes, there's not even a wave out there usually. He said, it's proper size. So we went out and we had this great conversation about Dying to Live, which is an organ transplant story. In essence, about 6 people and the waiting game of waking up each day and not knowing whether you were going to die or live, pending whether you were going to get the transplant. And so we got out there, and it was actually very different to the surfs we had in Margaret River, where we could sit down and literally have a chat. We were like paddling most of the time because it was huge. Get a wave and then you're pushed back into the shore. And then, so in between this, we kind of just go, oh, hey, mate, what are you thinking about, about the organ donor doco? And I'd asked Rich if he would help me market it with a more traditional TVC that we could get online. And Revolver came in and they said that they would be happy to facilitate that, etc. And everyone was going to work on it for next to nothing. And then I go, okay, I've got a couple of ideas, and he's like, yeah, me too. And then bang, wave would come, get pushed in, come back out. And then he's like, hey, how about like a Monty Python kind of skit? And he's like, breaks every rule that TV commercial organisations like to do, like controversy, religion, etc., etc. And I'm like, he's like, 2 Roman guards talking to Jesus about organ transplant. I'm like, oh my God, I love it already. And then bang, another wave would come. And it literally was, we probably got 5 minutes of chat time for that board meeting out of like an hour and a half in the surf.
Epic stuff.
And then I went back and wrote it up, but it's sort of everything that Toddy had told me about the situation and I think what was interesting was when the way you make your films, Toddy, like Frackman and this one and others, is there's a problem for you to solve, right? Like you're kind of, and that's where I think we really like paralleled. Like you go, I'm making this, my solution to this. The problem is that in Australia, the complication with organ donation is so detailed and moribund and difficult for everybody. And the government went digital at some point, didn't tell anyone properly about it, didn't communicate clearly. Each state was one outing different ways of signing up for organ donation. And that problem was the one you were trying to fix. Like, yeah, you were trying to make a great, impactful, personal film, but your primary goal was to change shift the dial on organ donation, right?
Yeah.
Or pretty close, maybe 1, 2, whatever. And
then, there was 2. One was sign people up, and the second one was to get people and their families to have the conversation, so that
to talk.
Even someone signed up couldn't be kind of cut off because someone in the family decided that they.
So I like that. I liked the way he explained it and talked about it, and I thought and for me, I love solving the problem, using the creativity or whatever to solve a problem, whether that's for a brand or I've found it useful for organizations and NGOs as well. But there's always some issue or problem that somebody's got, and to try and solve that elegantly, I suppose is the word. In this case, we went for like a maximum punch in the face.
Excuse me, down here. Hey, can I ask you a question?
Yes, my son. I am here for you. Literally.
Have you thought about maybe becoming an organ donor?
Is this really the best time to bring this up?
Oh, we get it. No one wants to talk about death. But, not all of us are going to the eternal paradise, and your organs could save the lives of up to 6 people.
7 people. Not to mention how your bones and soft tissue and ligaments could change the lives of many others.
And corneas, it will help blind people see.
What a miracle!
Obviously, I would do it. I'm Jesus.
Yes, you're Jesus, Yeah, you've helped the lepers. But this is very specific.
How?
What, have you gone online and signed the organ donor registry?
The organ what?
The organ donor registry.
Isn't it on my license?
It used to be. Now you got to go online, but it's very simple.
Common misconception. Except in South Australia, that's still on the license.
South Australia.
Have you got a smartphone?
Of course we have a smartphone, and we've taken the liberty of pre-filling the form. So all you got to do is press the little button.
Bring it here.
Just stretch that little finger.
There you go. One more.
Oh, nice.
Thank you, Jesus. You're a good guy.
Is that it then?
Oh, sorry, there's one more little thing.
What?
Your family has to be on board for this.
Really?
We've also anticipated this bit, and we have a surprise for you. Here's your mum and dad.
Oh, hello, mother. Hello, earthly father. Did you follow all this?
Yeah, we got the general gist of it. You want to be an organ donor?
We think that's awesome.
Happy now?
We are so proud of the work that you've
Yeah.
done today. You're going to change the lives of so many people. Do you mind if I get a selfie?
Why not?
Ah, yes, thanks so much.
3, 2, 1.
Organ donors. Yeah, nice. Hey, listen. Hashtag register.
Hashtag dying to live.
Hashtag blessed.
Haha, hashtag blessed, you said. Nailed it.
See you, Jesus. Thanks again.
So we decided to utilize, this is where Toddy was great. Like, he had no reservations at all. And we also were able to sit one step away from the OTA. So using his film, we could talk about all these issues, but there was no government organisation on the line for it.
Yeah.
But nobody really knew that. And then also that ability to use the viral nature of the internet and to send small pieces of film around is so fantastic that it was really a big experiment. And I still learnt so much. I mean, I just thought it was, so we wrote the script. I don't think we changed a word, Toddy. Just
I only had that one controversial line, which one of my mates gave me about nailed it, but everything else was pretty well as is.
It's pretty much like, I don't know, like we just had it. And then my company got on board. We had a tiny bit of money, enough to pay the goats. But we got beautiful, incredible wardrobe, and we shot it in an amazing sort of old quarry just out of Sydney, about an hour out. And I think, as an experiment to solve a problem, I thought it was really fascinating. Like,
and it worked.
Yeah,
I mean,
it worked so well.
It just went absolute nuts. News.com picked it up first thing in the morning, and by the time I'd woken up in WA, it had already gone nuts, and I was already getting phone calls from Organ Tissue Authority and Donate Life and
the Catholic Church.
Yeah. Well, they just went straight to
and that's
online.
what I'm interested to explore more. I mean, like, obviously the film is set out, a doco is set out to have impact and to drive that. But this combination of using sort of commercial skills and linking that back in with this documentary world and doing something viral like this. I mean, what was sort of the impact that then came from that exercise, of doing that? It's now in the world. What happens next?
Well, we had to defend it first, and also because Revolver and Richard put their name to it, and also Good Pitch through the Shark Island Foundation. They were a big supporter of the film, and they were okay at that stage with them being on the credit. So there was a bunch of things going on behind the scenes that both Rich and I weren't dealing with. So, for example, Shark Island Foundation and Good Pitch started getting phone calls going, blah, blah, blah. And then Scream West is getting phone calls. And why are you kind of supporting this? And even the comments, they had no idea that the film was completely separate to what we had made here, yet both of them were trying to achieve the same thing, but different organisations, etc. So I'm going, it's got nothing to do with Screen West. This is something that we've put together with Good Pitch money that Rich and Revolver are now kind of involved in. But it got pretty nasty pretty quickly, and I put my hand up because in the end it was my fight. It was I was trying to change organ donation, and Rich and Revolver had come over and really supported me with that. But I was like, you guys don't have to take the heat on this one. I'm really happy to defend it. And the second part of it was, within that, what would Jesus do? There was a lot of really good messaging that Richard really intertwined so creatively into it. That meant so much to the campaign. Like, have the chat and that kind of sign up, and the fact that it wasn't on the licenses instead of South Australia. There was a lot of messaging in this short kind of clip. And when I had to defend it, so I ended up on the first thing, Carl Stefanovic and those guys rang me up and they're like, hey, we want you to come on. And I was in Byron. I wasn't in WA. I was in Byron at the time. And I'm like, I'm in Byron Bay. And they're like, can you come up the Gold Coast today? And I'm like, yeah, sure. And then meanwhile, I'm having chats to Rich, and then he's talking to Revolver, and I'm talking to Good Pitch.
I was on the news. I was in the middle of Sydney on the TV news that night. I mean, this is the first flipping day. I was on the news. You were on the breakfast
Wow.
show. I was interviewed out the
man.
front by Channel 7 or 9 cameras. That was on every single broadcast. Everybody covered it and
Yeah.
played the ad. And this is
Yeah.
the best bit about all of it was in friggin' every newspaper. And then the following day it was in Sweden, Ireland, Germany,
Yeah, everywhere.
America. It was on podcasts. It went berserk. But the
Yeah.
whole point was that all me and Toddy wanted people to do was talk about it and be aware of it. And the number of people that went, I didn't know any of these things. Like, for you to get that messaging in the same way effectively into the world, if you did a government campaign, maybe it would cost you millions.
Yeah.
And the effect of it would be, because of the safety required and nobody can get in trouble, the effect would be minimal.
Yeah.
If almost no point, like, whereas with a small amount of money, maximum bravery, and this experiment where it never actually ran as an ad. I mean, one of the great ironies was like that petition, the guys that do petitions and they ask for your signature. I got it sent to me to get my signature to get it banned.
It's great.
I'd love to ban my own thing. Go for it.
In the petition, they had the ad and played it. Like, everywhere that people complained about it, it was getting run and played. So, I mean, I don't even know statistically how much coverage there was from it. I do remember it was the same day that Harry and Meghan arrived in Australia. And I was
well, that was
we're going to compete with heavy
listen to this.
PR.
So I was on standby. I had to get to the Goldie at like 6:30 or something. And I think, how great I am with time and schedules. I was like, oh shit, there's an hour difference. So I got there like at about 4:30 or something. So I'm hanging around all morning, and I was dirty on that because I missed my surf. And then like the producer keeps on getting me, on the headset was set up there with the camera and the backdrop on the Goldie, and producer's like, oh, sorry, like Harry's plane's just turned up. And I'm like, Harry who? And then he's like, oh, like the Prince. And I'm like, oh, right. Oh, so that's all right. I don't mind waiting for him. And then, but it was like watching, paint dry. And they literally were live crossed for an hour and 50 minutes of the 2-hour show. And they're like at about 8:30, I think, going into 9 o'clock finish. They're on the phone to me going, look, we're probably not going to be able to do it, but we feel really bad about, do you want to go down and do an interview with the Gold Coast TV kind of equivalent of us, and they'll run it? I said, yeah, no worries. And so go down, I run down and I do it. And then we're just about to finish the interview. And the producer runs back down and says, come back up. Carl wants it, really wants it. They finish with Prince and it's on. So I run back up there and I've got him kind of with the direct feed. And Carl's like, oh, mate, love it. We absolutely love this. He said, I've got to go in really objective, of course, but I just want to let you know. Brilliant.
I'm actually thinking about that. In some ways, we may have been like having our show playing just after Seinfeld then. Like we had that on that day, like everybody was looking at the news. And I remember seeing in the news feeds, it was their story. And then there was a picture of our Jesus on the cross with organ donation. What would Jesus do? And all this. And I think maybe it turned into a benefit. I mean, we had the heat was pretty strong. I mean, there was some death threats and a few heavy things. But I think in the end, it was definitely worth it. And I'd do it again. I think what you learn from it in future is that power of, and everybody knows it now, but that accelerated power of shorter lengths of film now is ballistic. Like that rise of TikTok and all that, and then how long things last is extremely short as well. And I think in terms of like how, like it was Toddy's idea to get me to do it. It wasn't my idea. Like he's the one who thought, okay, I've got this going, but I've got some money here and I'm not going to just do what I normally do. I'm going to do something different. Yeah. And do you want to help? Now that's his sort of vision for it, and him not being married to his craft. And I think often what happens on any side of industry is you go, well, documentaries are done this way and they should always be done this way. Well, that's not true. Like that's not how you do it. Like that's documentary is probably absolutely primed to be flipped on its head because it's got so many, this kind of feeling about it, and it can be done many ways. And the way you market it doesn't have to be done the same way. And, we both experienced it when we make our, I experienced it, and Toddy helped me a lot with, I did a feature length doc and he helped me immensely with that. The amount of times you just get told, oh, it's done this way and that's it.
Yeah.
And you're like, why? I don't want to do it that way. So I think that's
also,
what he taught me from that project,
One of the things that you said there too, Rich, is just important, and it's why I love kind of Maddie's vision of this kind of hodgepodge of different. I would never, ever, let alone meet you, I would just never have met a TVC guy or a branding guy or, the likes of Revolver, because I just don't swing in that world. Some doco makers also do TVCs or they do a bit of drama. Mate, I've only done doco my whole life. So having that opportunity to find out the first thing that I found out at the first Emergence was that there are people in that very commercial world that give a shit and do cool stuff in the same kind of world that I live in, cause-based stuff. Yeah, for sure, they do their very commercial stuff, but they take the money from that and try to put it somewhere else, or will take a bit of hit on the fee to be able to do something very cool, including, what you've done with the runners out of Africa, and that was really refreshing. But had it not been for Emergence, you and I just wouldn't have met, and I wouldn't have had the opportunity to think. There's no way I could just go out and think, oh yeah, I'm going to go and find $500,000 for what we did. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah. Yeah, but everybody has those. I think ultimately everybody wants to get paid to be well, not everybody, but people like us, you want to get paid to be creative, right? That's you set out in your, whatever your path or industry is, whether it's music or if it's documentary, film, commercials, as well as this home for people that are misfits in business or whatever. And they just want to get paid to be commercial and use their minds in interesting ways. And what particular craft you end up getting into is often a bit of an accident. It's not perfect. You've grabbed the camera here or you've done this there and you find your path, or you're out in the surf and you start thinking, oh, I'd like to photograph or film that surfer. So we're all really the same. And that beauty of the Emergence is it's got no rule about what kind of creative you are. You don't have to be from this or that stream. But if you go to it, I would say, Toddy will know, if I went to an advertising festival, it's quite narrow. If I go to a documentary festival, it's also kind of narrow. You're not jumping across the streams. And if you've got like significant ADHD, like most of us have, you want to be looking for different ways of doing things. Like you want to go, oh, that's so cool. And so like down at Emergence, we've seen, YouTube creatives who just desperately want to make something. So they just go out and film something and put it on YouTube and they have a big hit, and then they're into TV shows, or installation people, guys that build big sets for like rock shows. I saw a guy down there do that, photographers, musicians, Toddy, all these different people. And I think you're just trying to find ways. So like, and then as you develop in your career, you also, most people will at some point go, wow, this technique I've learned to sell this soft drink could be pretty handy for like getting donations for eye surgery or something, and that's all it's about really. Like, then you arrive. And then, so when me and Toddy met, we had totally different backgrounds, but I think we had our set of values we had were so similar at the time.
Yeah.
And so that our ability to like just cross over and help one another was so natural, I guess, and effortless. And it really wasn't about money. I mean, it wasn't about that at all.
And that's where I'm really curious, because we've been talking with everybody about, like, I suppose I've described it as what that ingredient is around creative glue. What is it that sticks people together? What brings creative people together? What drives that creativity that creates that bond? And what you've just talked about there between, and we've seen this thematically come through about utilizing commercial acumen for better outcomes and change, and wanting to use storytelling to engage around issues that matter. The surf, that connectivity, that desire to want to work through something, that desire to want to get something out that's inside of you, that's instinctive, that wants together. Like, what do you think it is about all that? What is there any one part of that really sticks out for you guys that is that gluey piece, which Emergence seems to foster better than anything else we've seen?
For me, even meeting all the people I meet, there has to be like that emotional hook that Rich was talking about, definitely. So it could be a cause, but if there's a cause without that emotion, I find it much harder to, do a campaign on, too much plastic going into dumps, unless versus obviously like an organ donation doco.
Yeah.
So if I can't find, it can be a cause, but it has to have a really emotional hook at the heart of it to get me excited. So when Rich was talking about the films that he wanted to make, and we'd already had this quite crazy overlap of the first film he made was, it was like a story in Rwanda, and it was at the heart of it. You would have thought a health story, but it wasn't. It was a compassionate human story. And I was like, oh yeah, I did this one in Bali about this eye surgeon, and we're like, what? And then he told me about the kind of the Rolex campaign that he did with James Bond, and again it was back to eyes, and I'm like, dude, we've got more than, but at the heart of all of those things, again, were very emotional stories that had attracted us enough to put, a shitload of time and effort. So that's for sure my glue. And then you got to kind of like the guy if you want to work with him.
Or let him stay in your house.
Yeah, that's right.
What about for you, Rich?
Well, I mean, that Toddy said it perfect, really. But I mean, if you think that there's a certain sense of like deep, for a lot of us, there's this deep, almost wild confidence and wild insecurity at the same time about our ideas and things. And like, but if you think you know the answer to help solve something, I think that's, I think that's important. You think you've got a way of solving something, then you just have to do it. And I think what Toddy was alluding to with the plastic there is probably the lack of the human being involved. Like, where's the human thing? Because if you think your work can lay out a path or give somebody help in other ways, not just to sort of clap and buy popcorn and come and look at something, like, and I often think about that. Why don't I go towards making more theatrical film and things like that? And I think it's because, well, why do I stay with brands? Like, why am I still working for brands? Yeah. And I think it's because I think there's a big problem there in the world that if brands can be redirected, they're a huge tool for good. Like, because they're so comprehensive and so immersive in our lives, that if you can push them in a good way, all that money and energy goes into a good place.
Yeah.
And I mean, I don't think it's one or the other. Like, I get how difficult it is to do that, but it's no more difficult than trying to get a documentary funded, up and run. That's really hard, actually. Like, it takes incredible effort and energy and years out of your life to do a comprehensive documentary and make it successful. Yeah. And so I've done it. So I sort of bounce around and do, like, the last thing I made was 60 seconds long. it took me 3 months to make it. And it was like,
Wow.
but I really got a lot of reward out of it. I loved doing it. And the people that asked me to work on it had a good problem to solve. So I really enjoyed that project. And brands or organizations or sporting bodies will often come to me with a problem. And I love that, to solve a problem. So that's probably why I don't end up going out and I dream up a film and write out a film and type it up. Like I've often said, oh, why don't I do that? And I think it's because I don't know what the problem is to solve there. And I guess that was the glue that got me and Toddy together. We both pondered, like when he started to tell me about the organ donate thing, he was like, he just gave me all this is stupid and why do we do this and why do we do that? And I was just like, fuck yeah, that is really dumb. Like there's got to be a better way to do this. And he'd also gone off around the world and kept telling me about the way the French or the Spanish or Portuguese do it. There was all opt-ins and opt-outs, such clever thinking around the world about this issue in particular. So I found that really fascinating. So that glue to solve a problem, why? And then that thing of being in finding parallels. Like I've got really good friends who are architects, and I'm like, the parallels are so similar. Like with the way I work on a film or something, like it's so similar. And but you find that's why I sort of like that emergence, the disparate people, the separate thing. I also love that there's no prizes, there's no awards, there's no, it's flat. Yeah, it's not a competition. No one's better than someone else. And I really enjoy that too, like in that place.
And just the environment and the way that Matt hodls that all together, where he pulls in, big favours from, what are they? Some of the best wineries in the world. And I love that you just go and watch a world-class speaker. And if that was a doco conference, there would be like 20 people lined up out the front of the toilet to mob that speaker as they come out and get 30 seconds of time. But I can remember sitting at, on the Vas Felix after I saw one of the most extraordinary guys speak that I've ever seen, the Colombian guy that was, that brokered the deal in the most incredible way with the Contras. And within 20 minutes, I went back in, grabbed a glass of wine, came back out, and there's just me and him on the lawn, and just having this incredible conversation about his path, which he touched on in the talk. But, there's a lot to talk about in the talk. But, I was really interested in his journey before even getting to that particular campaign and his approach to, like Rich was talking about, massive problems, and his way of thinking to be able to get the best outcome was, he's from another planet, this guy.
Yeah. And I think it's really interesting that opportunity that Emergence provides in just, I think Benny Akers, I think might have said it when I was speaking to him, like people just become completely generous with their time. There's this abundance of generosity and a lack of ego, and people are just there to share. And there's something that coming to Margs does to shed that away, something that the way in which Emergence is structured and the space created for people to have conversations between the talks allows for this ability for people to connect in different ways, and the cross-discipline aspect, which has obviously been such an important part of the reason why you guys have collaborated, is those different worlds colliding and coming together and being able to create that space for you to do something interesting and impactful together, which I guess leads me to one of my final questions, which is really, if people are coming to Emergence for the first time, we've got people that are listening to this on the eve of the anti-conference that is Emergence. What are some tips that you would give someone coming for the first time? They don't really know what this is all about. What do they got to know from you guys as seasoned veterans?
Not very much.
Approach anyone and have a chat. That'd be my first tip, regardless of you know, how important you think they are just because of, I mean, that was a beautiful line that you just said, Scotty, about the lack of ego. You know, we were talking about competition, but that is, you know, I don't think I've met a dickhead at Emergence in all the festivals. So I think for me, that's, you know, that's a good one. Just, you know, don't worry about who you are and who they are, and just talk to anyone that's in your space that you find interesting, you know?
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah, maybe whatever field you're. I mean, if you just think of the as a way of throwing a rope around it, I mean, it might even be valuable. Not even if you don't even see yourself as a creative person. I just think like it's just a fantastic mind opening experience that gives you a lot of confidence. Like because we do work in isolated ways, and Toddy will know this really well, and I do as well, because we've walked away from being part of companies and things like that, and we work a lot on our own. That missing stuff of rubbing shoulders with other people is so important. So if you found yourself, if you've just been sitting back to back on pulling your laptop open and grinding away, just split for a few days, get out of it, open and get down there, like, because it's sort of like a good movie that you don't know too much about. You get down there and it'll wash over you. And I know that from the presenters to the people that arrive, they're all like, wow, I didn't really know it was going to be like this.
Yeah.
And I think it's a combination of the founders, the village that's Margaret River, the way they embrace people is different. You know, it's that they're very open, and so that feeling and spirit is embraced by that environment, and it's something in that combination, and it's very surprising and really remarkable. I mean, you cannot not gain something from going. Yeah, it's hard to put into words. We often talk about it, and like I work a lot over here with Will from Heckler, and you know, I've stayed connected with everybody. You know, many people that I've met, I've invited lots of friends down. Other guys from have come and spoken as well, and all to a person loved it and had a sort of a valuable experience from it. You know.
Can I just add a couple of quick ones to that too, Scotty? I was just thinking,
Of course.
we haven't even spoken about just the other one, and that's Maddie's amazing relationship with the Wadandi mob, and you know, Wayne and Zach Webb's kind of influence on it. And I like to almost not read the schedule completely, so I can just be surprised with what he's dreamed up with those guys this year, and how visitors to the area that don't really know our local mob are just so impressed by the warmth and the welcoming nature of that family, you know. So that's one I love. And the other one I was thinking about, as Rich was speaking about it right then, was the fact that you don't have to be a creative, like Rich said, because I just take away these massive kind of life lessons every time I come to Emergence. I'm just blown away by something that one of these incredible people has said during their talk, which is, you know, just an absolute gem that has got me thinking in another way that, you know, you think you've thought about it all, and then you hear someone in a talk just go, and, you know, and then when that happened to me, it's usually involving crisis, but this is what I did, you know, and I'm like, wow, that's just so kind of philosophically moving. I don't need to be a creative to have learned something that's going to affect my life or my business, or, you know.
Yeah, I think that's good. I was just thinking, like, so much of our interests and what we follow is functioned by algorithms now, that it funnels us into only the things we like. So I would say to someone coming down, pick somebody out of your field, go and see talks, the opposite of what you flip a coin on someone, go to the other end. Oh, I'm no interest. There's no relevance in that for me, blah, blah, blah. Pick one, at least go and see that one and try and see what happens.
Definitely.
You know, that's what I would do. Get out of that narrow focus and let it sort of wash over you.
Yeah, on a previous episode talking to Kylie Robertson, I admitted to the fact that I'd pegged her presentation as the one I was going to sit at the back of the room and just work on my laptop, and it took 30 seconds for me to shut that thing up and put it under my seat, and it's still my favourite keynote in all the years at Emergence. So something surprisingly good can come out of something that you just never expect, and I think that is quintessentially Emergence and what makes part of it so brilliant, along with the brilliant Aslumni. And guys, thank you so much for your time. I hope people got something from this. And if you haven't seen some of those documentaries and some of the pieces of work, please make sure you follow these guys and check those out. That's all we've got time for today. Emergence kicks off tonight, as I said, if you're listening to this on the day of its release. So make sure you get yourself there. Lucy, can you tell us a bit more about what Creative Glue's got in store over the next week or so?
Well, I am super excited to announce that Creative Glue will be heading to the one and only Emergence Creative Festival in Margaret River. We'll be covering the anti-conference on Wednesday and Thursday this week with daily wrap-ups, which you'll find on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. At the end of the festival, there'll be a full festival wrap-up, including interviews with some of the keynote speakers and our very own highlights of each day. If you see us out and about at Emergence, please come and say hi, because you never know, we might even end up interviewing you in our Emergence Creative Festival special podcast. Thanks again for making space, and look out for Creative Glue's Emergence Festival 2024 wrap-up podcast over the next couple of days.